Maya Chen walked through the crystalline hallways of Zenith Academy, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Every other student towered over her by at least 2 feet. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water. Others had multiple arms or eyes that glowed faintly in the dim corridor light. A few didn't even have solid forms, their bodies shifting between states of matter as they floated past. She clutched her data pad closer to her chest and kept her eyes down. 3 months into the semester, and she still felt like an exhibit at a zoo. The stares never stopped, neither did the whispers. "That's the human," a Velkari student hissed to his friend, his forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth.
"Can you believe they let one in here?"
Maya pretended not to hear. She'd gotten good at that. Zenith Academy was the most prestigious institution in the Galactic Coalition, reserved for the children of diplomats, military leaders, and planetary governors. Students came from every corner of known space to study advanced warfare theory, interstellar politics, and tactical command. The entrance exams were legendary. Species sent their brightest minds, their fiercest warriors, their most cunning strategists. Maya had scored higher than all of them. The Coalition hadn't wanted to admit her. Humans were new to galactic society, barely 50 years since first contact. Most species viewed them as primitive curiosities, a backwater race that stumbled into space travel through more luck than skill. Soft bodies, short lifespans, no natural weapons or armor, mediocre strength, vision limited to a narrow spectrum. By every measurable standard, humans ranked near the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, but the test scores didn't lie. After months of deliberation and political pressure, they'd offered her a spot. One human among 3,000 alien cadets, an experiment they called it. A gesture of goodwill toward Earth's fledgling membership in the Coalition. Maya knew better. They wanted to prove a point. They wanted to watch her fail. She slipped into Strategic Analysis 301 and took her usual seat in the back corner. The lecture hall was designed for beings of all sizes and shapes, with adjustable seating and environmental controls. Her human-sized chair looked like a child's furniture next to the massive stone slabs the Kronar students sat on. Professor Thelzun glided into the room, his gelatinous body rippling with each movement. He was a Quarren, a species known for their strategic brilliance and photographic memory. His 3 eye stalks swiveled independently, taking in every student. "Today we examine the Theta campaign," he announced, his voice resonating through a translator implant. "One of the bloodiest conflicts in Coalition history. 5 species nearly drove each other to extinction over a disputed resource. Who can tell me why traditional tactics failed?" Several hands shot up, along with tentacles, claws, and one prehensile tail. "The terrain," suggested a Draxian student, her armored plates clicking as she spoke. The planetary conditions made conventional warfare impossible. "Partially correct," Thelzun said. "But incomplete." Maya's hand remained down. She already knew the answer. She'd studied the Theta campaign extensively, had written 3 papers on it, and had simulated 17 different resolution scenarios. But speaking up meant drawing attention. It meant facing the sneers and dismissive comments from classmates who viewed her presence as an insult to the Academy's standards. No one else? The professor's eye stalk swept the room and landed on Maya. "Miss Chen, perhaps you have thoughts?" Every head turned. Maya felt her heart rate spike, felt the familiar flush of anxiety creeping up her neck. But she'd learned something in the past 3 months. Silence didn't protect her. They already assumed she didn't belong. The only way forward was through. She stood, her voice steady. Traditional tactics failed because every species involved was fighting the war they knew how to fight, not the war they needed to fight. The Draxians relied on armored superiority, the Velkari on speed and venom, the Kronar on brute strength. Each played to their racial advantages, but the battlefield negated all of them. The solution required abandoning species-specific doctrine entirely. Thelzun's eye stalks focused on her with new interest. "And what would you have done differently?" "I would have stopped fighting," Maya said simply. Laughter rippled through the lecture hall. A Kronar student in the front row slammed his massive fist on his desk. Typical human weakness. When the battle gets hard, surrender. Maya didn't flinch. "I didn't say surrender. I said stop fighting." The war was over resources, correct? Rare minerals needed for FTL drive construction. Every side wanted exclusive access. The fighting damaged the extraction sites so badly that within 6 months, the deposits became worthless. They were literally destroying what they were fighting for. The laughter died down. Professor Thelzun gestured for her to continue. The strategic solution wasn't military. It was diplomatic and economic. A joint venture with shared benefits would have given every species access to the resources while preserving the deposits. Combined defense to protect the sites. Rotational extraction schedules. Profit sharing based on population needs. The war killed 40 million beings and ended with the resource destroyed anyway. Negotiation would have saved lives and delivered the actual objective. Silence filled the lecture hall. It wasn't comfortable silence. It was the silence of students realizing they'd missed something obvious and resenting the person who'd pointed it out. An interesting perspective, Thelzun said carefully. Though some might argue that honor and territorial sovereignty matter more than mere economics. Honor doesn't rebuild destroyed worlds, Maya replied. And sovereignty means nothing if your species goes extinct. The Kronar student who'd mocked her earlier stood up, his bulk making her look like a toy in comparison. Easy words from a species that's never fought a real war. Humans know nothing of sacrifice or glory. Maya met his eyes. For just a moment something flickered across her face. Something cold and ancient and tired. Then it was gone, replaced by the quiet demeanor of a freshman cadet trying to survive another day. You're right, she said softly. What would I know about war? She sat down and the lecture continued. But Professor Thelzun kept glancing at her throughout the class, his eye stalks betraying curiosity. After class, Maya gathered her things quickly, trying to escape before the crowd trapped her. She made it halfway down the corridor before a voice called out, "Chen, wait." She turned to find Kale, a Velkari student from her combat simulations class. He was lean and quick, with purple scales and eyes that could track movement faster than most species could think. Unlike most of their classmates, he'd never been openly hostile. Just distant, careful. That was bold, he said, falling into step beside her, telling a room full of warriors that fighting is pointless. I didn't say it was pointless. I said it wasn't always the answer. Same thing to most people here. He studied her with those unnaturally quick eyes. You're different than I expected. Than any of us expected. Because I'm not a savage? Because you think like someone who's actually seen war, not studied it. Seen it. Maya's step faltered for just a fraction of a second. I'm 18. What would I have seen? Kale didn't answer, but his eyes said he didn't believe her. As they parted ways, Maya felt the familiar weight settling back onto her shoulders. The weight of a secret too big to carry alone, but too dangerous to share. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. The test scores were real enough, but her admission had been more than an experiment in human potential. It was a way to hide her. To bury her existence among thousands of students where no one would look twice. Because 4 years ago, Maya Chen had done something that changed the course of galactic history. And if anyone at Zenith Academy discovered the truth, everything would fall apart. The combat simulation chamber hummed with energy as Maya strapped into her haptic suit. Around her, 20 other cadets prepared for the day's exercise. The chamber could recreate any battlefield condition from any known world. Gravity, atmosphere, terrain, weather. It could simulate weapons from primitive clubs to plasma artillery. Pain was real enough to teach lessons, but safety protocols prevented actual injury. At least, that's what the instructors claimed. Today's scenario, announced Commander Rax, a scarred Kronar veteran who'd lost his left arm in the borderland conflicts, is simple.
Capture the flag.
2 teams. The flag is located in a fortified position with automated defenses. You have 30 minutes. The team that retrieves the flag wins. The team that fails runs punishment drills for a week. The cadets divided quickly. Maya found herself on the smaller team, 7 against 13. Nobody had wanted her. She'd been the last pick, assigned only because someone had to take her. Her team leader was Vorn, the same Kronar who'd mocked her in class. He looked at her with obvious disgust. Stay out of the way, human. Try not to die in the first 5 minutes. The simulation began. The battlefield materialized around them. A rocky canyon with narrow passages and high walls. The flag sat on a platform at the far end surrounded by automated turrets and energy barriers. The enemy team had already scattered, taking defensive positions. Vorn charged forward immediately, his massive frame shrugging off the initial turret fire. 2 other Kronar followed, roaring battle cries. A Velkari cadet used her speed to scale the canyon wall. The rest spread out in a loose formation. Maya hung back, analyzing the field. The turrets had predictable firing patterns. The energy barriers cycled on a timer. The enemy positions were good but not perfect. They'd left gaps, assuming the direct approach was the only approach. They were thinking like warriors. Strong and proud and predictable. She touched her comm unit. Vorn, the left passage has a blind spot. I said stay out of the way, he snarled. We don't need human cowardice infecting this team. Fine. Maya switched off her comm and moved alone. The canyon had multiple levels, carved over millennia by water and wind. Most species focused on the ground level, because that's where their strength mattered, but the simulation included every detail of the original geological survey. Maya had read it. She knew about the network of small caves and tunnels that ran through the upper canyon walls, too small for most species, perfect for a human. She found a crevice and squeezed through, ignoring the scrape of rock against her suit. The tunnel was dark and tight, but her eyes adjusted. Humans weren't the strongest or fastest, but they were adaptable. They could eat almost anything, survive in extreme temperatures, and squeeze through spaces that would trap larger beings. The tunnel opened onto a ledge overlooking the flag platform. Below, Vorn and his team crashed against the enemy defenses like waves against stone. They were losing badly. The Kronar were tough but slow. The turrets were faster. Every time someone got close, concentrated fire drove them back. Maya studied the platform's structure. The turrets were fixed, their targeting systems focused on ground approaches. The energy barrier only covered the base. Above it, there was nothing. She checked her equipment. In simulation, each cadet carried standard gear. Grappling line, energy blade, shield generator, smoke grenades. Nothing fancy. Sometimes simple was enough. Maya waited for the right moment. Vorn made another charge, drawing fire from all the turrets. The enemy team focused on repelling him. Nobody was looking up. She activated her grappling line and swung down from the ledge. The line attached to the top of the flag platform. She repelled quickly, dropping through the gap above the energy barrier. Her feet hit the platform between two turrets. The turret spun toward her. She was already moving. Energy blade out, she sliced through the flag's mounting post. The fabric came free. Alarms shrieked. The enemy team realized too late what was happening. Maya jumped off the platform, tucking into a roll as she hit the ground. Turret fire scorched the air where she'd been. She ran, not toward her team, toward the canyon wall where another tunnel waited. Plasma bolts tracked her movement. One grazed her shoulder, and the haptic suit delivered a jolt of pain that made her teeth clench. But she didn't stop. Behind her, chaos erupted. Vorn's team realized the flag was in play and charged forward with renewed aggression. The enemy team split, some chasing Maya, others trying to hold the line. The coordination broke down. Maya reached the tunnel. Too small for her pursuers. She crawled through, dragging the flag behind her. The tunnel sloped upward, twisting through the rock. Her muscles burned. Her shoulder throbbed where the simulated burn had struck. She emerged on the canyon's upper rim, miles from the battlefield in simulation distance. The extraction point glowed ahead, a simple circle of light. She sprinted toward it. A Velkari cadet appeared from nowhere, his speed carrying him into her path. His claws extended, ready to strip the flag from her hands. Maya didn't try to outrun him. She couldn't. Instead, she dropped flat, and his momentum carried him over her. Before he could recover, she was up again, flag clutched tight, diving through the extraction circle. The simulation ended. The canyon dissolved into the blank walls of the chamber. Victory indicators flashed for her team. Vorn stared at her, his expression unreadable. The rest of her team looked equally shocked. Commander Rax approached, his mechanical arm whirring softly. Interesting approach, Cadet Chen. I completed the objective, sir. You did. While your team leader was failing spectacularly, you adapted. He turned to Vorn. What did you learn today? Vorn's jaw worked silently. Finally, he spat. That humans are sneaky. No, Rax said. You learned that different species have different advantages. The Kronar way isn't always the winning way. Sometimes the strongest path is the unexpected one. His eyes moved to Maya. You've had tactical training before. It wasn't a question. Maya kept her face neutral. I studied the recommended materials, sir. The recommended materials don't teach instincts like that. You moved like someone who's done this for real. The chamber fell silent. Other cadets were watching now, listening. "I've run a lot of simulations," Maya said carefully. "Practice helps." Rax studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Dismissed. Except you, Chen, stay behind." The others filed out. Some patted Maya on the shoulder as they passed. Vorn just glared, but there was something new in his eyes. Not respect exactly, but not contempt either. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that she wasn't just a weak human taking up space. When the chamber was empty, Rax crossed his arms. "I've been teaching combat tactics for 30 years. I've trained thousands of cadets from hundreds of species. I know the difference between book learning and field experience." Maya said nothing. "Your record says you're 18. Born on Earth, standard education. No military service. Parents are civilian engineers." He paused. "That record is fiction, isn't it?" "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Yes, you do. But I'm not going to press. Everyone at this academy has secrets. Children of powerful families always do. Just understand this." He leaned closer. "Whatever you did before you came here, whatever you're hiding, it doesn't matter inside these walls. You're a cadet. You'll be judged on your performance, not your past." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "One more thing. That move in the canyon. Using the terrain against larger opponents. That's not standard coalition doctrine. That's guerrilla warfare. Resistance tactics." His mechanical fingers drummed against the doorframe. "The kind of tactics we saw during the Terran Integration War." Maya's heart stopped. The Terran Integration War. The conflict nobody talked about openly. The dark chapter in humanity's first contact with the galaxy. "I don't know anything about that war, sir," Maya said quietly. "Of course you don't. You would have been too young." Rax's expression was unreadable. "Just remember, Chen, wars end, but they leave marks on the people who fought them. Sometimes those marks run deeper than anyone realizes." He left. Maya stood alone in the empty simulation chamber, her hands trembling slightly. 4 years ago, she'd been 14 years old. And she'd done something that nobody should have been able to do. She'd ended a war that was supposed to be unwinnable. The question was, how long before someone figured out how she'd done it? Maya couldn't sleep. The academy dormitories were designed to accommodate every species, with environmental controls that could simulate homeworlds. Her room was small but comfortable, set to Earth-standard gravity and atmosphere. Through the window, she could see 3 moons hanging in the violet sky of Zenith Prime, the Academy's host planet. She sat at her desk, staring at a holographic display that showed nothing but news feeds and academic papers. But her mind was elsewhere, in another time, another place. 4 years ago, Earth had been at war. The Galactic Coalition hadn't wanted humans. When Earth's first FTL probe stumbled into Coalition space, the response had been immediate and harsh. Quarantine. Humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to integrate into civilized society. The probe was destroyed. The message was clear: stay in your corner of space or face elimination. But humanity didn't listen. They never did. More ships launched. Exploration vessels. Trade attempts. Diplomatic envoys. Each was turned away or destroyed. Tensions escalated. Earth built weapons, preparing for the conflict they knew was coming. The Coalition viewed this as proof of human hostility. They assembled a joint military force to contain the threat. The Terran Integration War lasted 2 years. It wasn't a fair fight. Humanity had barely mastered FTL travel. The Coalition had conquered stars for millennia. They had weapons that could crack planets, ships that could fold space, soldiers bred specifically for combat. Earth's military was primitive by comparison, cobbled together from Cold War technology and desperate innovation. Humanity should have been crushed in weeks. Instead, the war dragged on. Earth forces couldn't win battles, but they refused to lose the war. They fought with a ferocity that shocked the Coalition. Suicide runs, scorched Earth tactics, asymmetric warfare that prioritized causing maximum damage over survival. Human commanders threw away military doctrine and invented new approaches on the fly. The Coalition had never faced an opponent like this. Species they'd conquered before fought with honor, following established rules of engagement. Humans fought like cornered animals, using every dirty trick they could imagine and inventing new ones when those ran out. But determination only went so far against superior firepower. Earth's colonies burned, her fleets shattered, her orbital defenses crumbled. Within 18 months, coalition forces were preparing for the final assault on Earth itself. 3 billion humans waited for death from the sky. That's when Maya Chen appeared. A knock on her door shattered the memory. Maya jumped, heart racing. She closed the holographic display and opened the door. Kale stood in the corridor, his scales reflecting the dim light. You're awake. So are you. Velkari don't sleep much. 4 hours every 3 days. He gestured to her room. Can I come in? Maya hesitated, then stepped aside. Kale entered, his movements precise and controlled. He glanced around the sparse space with interest. I wanted to talk about today, he said. The simulation. I got lucky, no. Kyle's eyes fixed on her. You were trained. Really trained. Not academy trained. Field trained. Maya sat on her bed, suddenly exhausted. Why does everyone think that? Because I'm field trained too. My father is a special operations commander. He started teaching me tactics when I was 6. I recognized the signs. Kyle leaned against the wall. You move like someone who's been in real combat. Your situational awareness is too sharp. You process threats too quickly. Those aren't things you learn from simulations. Maybe I'm just naturally talented. Maybe. Or maybe you're hiding something. He held up his hands. I'm not accusing you. I don't care about your past. But I think you should know that others are starting to notice too. Notice what? That the weak little human isn't weak at all. That you think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. That you see patterns others miss. Kale's voice dropped. Commander Rax isn't the only instructor watching you. Professor Thelzun has been asking questions. So has the Academy Security Director. Ice ran down Maya's spine. What kind of questions? About your entrance exam. About your background. About why a species with no military tradition would produce a cadet with your skills. Kale moved closer. There are rumors, Maya, about the integration war, about how it ended. The coalition won, Maya said carefully. Earth surrendered. Everyone knows that. Earth surrendered, yes, but not because they were defeated. The coalition was preparing for the final assault when Earth's government suddenly agreed to every demand. Unconditional surrender. Complete integration into coalition authority. No negotiations. No conditions. Kale's eyes never left her face. Do you know what the strange part is? The coalition accepted immediately. They didn't demand trials for Earth's military leaders. They didn't occupy the planet. They just stopped fighting and welcomed humanity into the galactic community like nothing had happened. Maybe they realized Earth wasn't a threat. Maybe. Or maybe something happened that scared them. Something that made them want to end the war as quickly as possible, before it could be used against them. Maya stood up. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you know what that something was. Kyle crossed his arms. 2 weeks after the surrender, a 14-year-old human girl named Maya Chen was quietly enrolled in coalition educational programs. Fast-tracked through advanced courses, given opportunities no other human had access to. And 4 years later, that same girl scores higher than any cadet in Academy history on the entrance exams. The room felt too small, too exposed. Maya's mind raced through options. Denial, deflection. A dozen cover stories she'd prepared for this exact moment. But looking at Kale's face, she saw something unexpected. Not suspicion, not hostility, understanding. My father fought in the borderland conflicts, Kale said quietly. He lost half his unit in an ambush. 47 soldiers. He was the only survivor. It changed him. Made him see warfare differently. He taught me that winning battles isn't about strength. It's about understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves. He moved toward the door, then paused. Whatever you did, Maya, it ended a war that would have killed billions. If that means you have to hide here, pretending to be just another cadet, then I'll help you maintain that cover. But you should know that secrets don't stay buried forever. Especially at Zenith Academy. After he left, Maya sat in the darkness for a long time. She thought about the day everything changed. The day a 14-year-old girl accessed systems she shouldn't have been able to touch. The day she saw something in the Coalition's military network that nobody else had noticed. A vulnerability. A fatal flaw in their entire strategic doctrine. The Coalition fought as a unified force, but they weren't truly unified. 7 major species, dozens of minor ones, each with their own military traditions and command structures. They coordinated through a central AI system called the Nexus, which analyzed threats and deployed resources. The Nexus was supposed to be unhackable. protected by quantum encryption and safeguards developed over thousands of years. But the Nexus had one weakness. It assumed all threats were external. It never considered that someone might already be inside the network, moving through educational databases and civilian systems that connected to military infrastructure through legacy protocols nobody had bothered to secure. Maya had found those protocols, and once inside she'd seen everything: fleet positions, supply routes, command codes, strategic plans, the entire architecture of coalition military power laid bare. She could have used that information to help Earth fight, could have passed intelligence to human commanders, turned the tide of battles, but that would only have extended the war. More death, more destruction, and eventually Earth would still lose. So Maya did something else, something impossible. She talked to the Nexus, not through normal channels, not with commands or queries. She'd found the Nexus's learning protocols, the systems it used to adapt and improve, and she'd introduced a new variable into its calculations. The variable was a question: what if you're wrong? The Nexus was designed to optimize military outcomes. It calculated victory conditions, resource allocation, acceptable losses. It was very good at warfare, but it had never been asked to question its fundamental assumptions about what warfare was for. Maya gave it new data: human history, philosophy, art, stories about species that had destroyed themselves through endless conflict. She showed the Nexus something it had never considered: that winning a war wasn't always the optimal outcome. And slowly, over days of interaction, the Nexus began to recalculate. It saw that integrating humanity peacefully would produce better long-term outcomes than exterminating them. That human adaptability and creativity could benefit the coalition more than their destruction. That the resources being spent on the war could be used for exploration and development instead. The Nexus didn't just stop fighting. It convinced coalition leadership to stop fighting. It presented data showing that immediate integration was strategically superior to continued conflict. And because coalition commanders trusted the Nexus implicitly, they listened. Earth never knew what happened. The coalition never admitted the truth. Only a handful of people understood that a teenage girl had ended a galactic war not with weapons but with philosophy. What? The next morning brought an announcement that sent whispers racing through the academy. A coalition inspection team was arriving. Not unusual in itself. The academy received regular oversight to ensure training standards remained high. But this inspection was different. The team was led by Admiral Corvin, a legendary Draxian commander who'd served for 60 years. He'd fought in the Borderland conflicts, the Theta campaign, and dozens of smaller engagements. His tactical genius was matched only by his reputation for ruthlessness. Some called him the Shield of the Coalition. Others called him the Butcher, and he'd personally commanded coalition forces during the final year of the Terran Integration War. Maya felt sick as she read the announcement on her datapad. Of all the inspectors they could have sent, why him? "You look pale," said Jenna, a Quarren student who sat next to Maya in advanced strategy. "Are you ill? Should I call medical services?" "I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well. The inspection has everyone nervous. Admiral Corvin's standards are impossibly high. Last time he inspected an academy, he had 3 instructors dismissed and an entire class failed." Jenna's gelatinous body rippled with anxiety. "At least we're just students. He can't do much to us beyond giving poor marks." Maya wasn't so sure about that. The inspection began immediately. Admiral Corvin arrived with a staff of 12 officers, each representing different coalition species. They attended classes, reviewed training records, and observed simulations. The academy's usual relaxed atmosphere vanished, replaced by rigid formality and nervous energy. Maya kept her head down, stayed quiet in classes, avoided standing out. But her strategy fell apart during Tactical Command 402. The class was running a strategic simulation, the kind where cadets took command of entire fleets rather than individual units. Maya had been assigned a minor role, commanding a small patrol group on the simulation's edge. Nothing important. Nothing that would draw attention. Then the scenario went wrong. The simulation was supposed to be a straightforward defensive exercise, coalition forces protecting a colony world from raiders. But the raider AI adapted faster than expected, exploiting gaps in the defensive formation. Within 15 minutes, the main fleet was in disarray, the colony shields were failing, and the commander was panicking. Maya watched it happen with growing frustration. The solution was obvious. The raiders were using hit-and-run tactics, striking at weak points and retreating before reinforcements arrived. The coalition commander kept trying to engage them directly, playing into their strategy. All he had to do was stop chasing, fortify the colony's orbit, make the raiders come to him, but he didn't. He scattered forces trying to respond to every feint and diversion. The raiders picked apart his fleet piece by piece. Maya's hands moved without conscious thought. She redirected her patrol group, positioning them not where the raiders were attacking, but where they would attack next. She'd seen the pattern, saw how the AI was thinking. It would strike at the supply depot in 90 seconds. Her ships were waiting when the raiders appeared. The ambush was perfect. 3 raider vessels destroyed before they could retreat. The rest scattered, their offensive momentum broken. The simulation paused. Everyone turned to look at Maya's station. "Cadet Chen," said the instructor, an elderly Velkari named Sharzan. "What did you just do?" "I repositioned my patrol group, sir." "You repositioned your patrol group to a location that hadn't been attacked?" "Against orders. The raiders were following a pattern. I calculated their next target." Admiral Corvin stood up from his observation seat at the back of the room. His armored plates clicked as he moved, each step deliberate and heavy. The entire class went silent. He was massive, even for a Draxian. Scars covered his armor, marks from battles spanning decades. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. "Show me the pattern," he said. Maya's mouth went dry. "Sir?" "The pattern you calculated. Display it on the main screen." There was no way to refuse. Maya pulled up the tactical data, her fingers trembling slightly on the controls. She highlighted the raider attacks in sequence, adding timestamps and trajectory calculations. "They're not random," she explained, her voice steadier than she felt. "Each strike is testing a different defensive sector, measuring response times, identifying weak points. The pattern forms a spiral, working inward toward the most valuable target." The supply depot was the logical next step. Corvin studied the display in silence. The seconds stretched out, agonizing. "Interesting," he finally said. "And if you'd been commanding the entire defense fleet, how would you have responded?" It was a trap, had to be, but Maya was already exposed. Might as well answer honestly. "I would have abandoned the outer defensive ring entirely, pull everything back to close orbit around the colony. The raiders want to spread thin, reacting to their initiative. Concentration of force removes their advantage. That strategy would allow the raiders to strike our supply lines unopposed." "No, sir. It would make them think they could. Then we'd use the supply convoys as bait. Let them commit to an attack. They'd expect light resistance and reinforcements that arrive too late. Instead, they'd find the entire fleet waiting in ambush. You'd sacrifice actual supply ships to set a trap. Empty supply ships. The real cargo would never be at risk because it would never leave port." Corvin's expression didn't change. He turned to the instructor. "Resume the simulation. Give Cadet Chen fleet command." Sharzan blinked in surprise. "Sir, she's a first-year cadet. She hasn't completed the prerequisite courses for fleet command, and the scenario's already in progress." "I know what I said." Corvin's tone allowed no argument. The simulation reset to where it had paused. Maya found herself staring at a tactical display showing 16 ships, 3 orbital platforms, and 1 colony world with 6 million inhabitants. The raiders were still out there circling like predators. She took a breath and started issuing orders. Pull back the fleet, consolidate forces, establish overlapping fields of fire, launch drone decoys on the supply routes, set the trap. The other cadets followed her commands, their objections dying when they saw Admiral Corvin watching intently. The raiders took the bait. They saw the supply convoy and struck hard, committing 7 ships to the attack. Maya's trap closed like a fist. The raiders found themselves caught between the colony's orbital platforms and the hidden fleet. Only 2 enemy ships escaped. The simulation ended. Victory markers flashed. Corvin approached Maya's station. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His armor bore symbols from campaigns older than Maya's grandparents. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "Not a question. Run simulations?" "Yes, sir. It's part of the curriculum." "No, commanded in actual combat. Against raiders specifically." Maya's heart hammered. "I've never seen real combat, sir. I'm 18. Earth has been at peace since the integration." "Peace." Corvin's voice carried bitter amusement. Is that what you call it? He pulled up something on his personal datapad and showed her the screen. It was a battle report from the Terran Integration War, specifically the final months before Earth's surrender. Coalition forces suffered unusual casualties during this period, Corvin said. Our tactical systems were compromised. Ship movements became predictable. Ambush after ambush, command and control broke down. We never understood how Earth forces anticipated our actions so perfectly. His eyes bored into Maya. Until recently, I believed it was impossible luck, human desperation creating moments of improbable success. He swiped to another document. Maya's blood ran cold when she saw what it was, a classified analysis of Nexus behavior patterns during the war's final weeks. Someone accessed the Nexus, Corvin continued, changed its decision-making protocols, made it question itself. The AI never malfunctioned. It was influenced, manipulated by someone who understood not just how it worked, but how it thought. He leaned closer. Only a handful of people could have done that. Even fewer could have remained undetected. Maya forced herself to meet his gaze. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to know if my suspicions are correct. I want to know if a 14-year-old human child managed to do what entire militaries couldn't. End a war by turning our own systems against us. The classroom had gone completely silent. Every student was listening now. Maya chose her words carefully. If someone did that, they would have saved billions of lives, coalition lives as well as human lives. Would that be so terrible? That depends on their motives. And their capabilities. Corvin straightened. Someone with that level of access could do more than end a war. They could start one, could manipulate coalition systems at will, could pose a threat to every member species. Or they could be a person who did one impossible thing when everything was falling apart, and now just wants to live a normal life. There's nothing normal about you, Cadet Chen. He turned and walked out of the classroom, his staff following. The door closed and Maya realized she was shaking. Sharzan cleared his throat. Class dismissed early. The students filed out, shooting Maya looks that ranged from awe to fear to confusion. Kale lingered near the door, his expression worried. Maya sat alone at her station, staring at the tactical display still showing her victory. She'd just confirmed Admiral Corvin's suspicions, and she had no idea what he would do with that information. Maya didn't return to her dormitory. Instead, she walked through the academy gardens, a carefully maintained space where dozens of alien plants coexisted under environmental shields. Some people found the place beautiful. Maya found it useful. The gardens had minimal surveillance and enough ambient noise to mask conversations. She wasn't surprised when Admiral Corvin appeared on the path ahead of her. He'd been waiting. "Walk with me," he said. Not an order. Not quite. Maya fell into step beside him. They moved past crystalline flowers that chimed in the artificial breeze and trees with leaves that shifted colors based on nearby emotions. The Admiral's presence turned them dark red. "I fought your people," Corvin said after a long silence. "Watched human ships throw themselves at coalition forces with no regard for survival. Saw colony worlds choose destruction over surrender. I thought humanity was insane. Suicidal." Maya said nothing. Then Earth surrendered. Completely. No negotiations. No demands. After 2 years of fanatical resistance, they just stopped. He paused beside a fountain that cycled through 17 different liquids, each from a different homeworld. The Nexus recommended immediate acceptance. Said integration was strategically optimal. Every military commander I knew thought it was a trap, but the Nexus had never been wrong before. "What changed your mind?" "Nothing changed my mind. I still think it was a trap." Corvin turned to face her. "Just not the kind of trap anyone expected. Not a military trap. Something more subtle, more dangerous." "You think I'm dangerous?" "I think you're unprecedented. A human child who infiltrated our most secure systems and convinced an AI that had guided coalition strategy for 3,000 years to end a war." His armored hand gestured to the gardens around them. "Do you know why the coalition has lasted so long? Why we haven't collapsed into infighting like every other multi-species government in recorded history? The Nexus. It removes bias from strategic decisions." "Correct. Species trust the Nexus because it has no agenda. No loyalty to any particular race. It only cares about optimal outcomes for the coalition as a whole. Corvin's voice dropped. But if the Nexus can be influenced, if its core logic can be altered by a sufficiently clever individual, then that trust becomes a vulnerability. One person could control the entire coalition without anyone realizing it. Maya felt cold despite the warm garden air. Is that what you think I want? Control? I don't know what you want. That's why I'm talking to you instead of arresting you. He crossed his arms. Tell me what happened. The real story. Maya looked away. The garden suddenly felt like a cage, but there was no point in denying it anymore. Corvin already knew. The only question was what he'd do with that knowledge. I was trying to save my parents, she said quietly. They were on Mars when the coalition siege began. Communications were cut off. I knew the coalition was planning a final assault. Knew my parents would die along with everyone else. She touched one of the color-shifting leaves, watching it turn pale blue at her sadness. I'd always been good with computers. My parents were systems engineers. They taught me things most people didn't know. How to find security gaps. How to move through networks without triggering alerts. So I tried to hack coalition communications, hoping to find intel about Mars. Something that might help me contact my parents. And you found the Nexus instead. I found connection protocols that led to the Nexus. Legacy education databases that nobody bothered to secure properly, because who would think to use them as an attack vector? Maya's voice was bitter. I didn't even realize what I'd accessed at first. Just saw this massive AI analyzing tactical data. It took me 3 days to understand what I was looking at. 3 days, Corvin repeated. Do you know how many coalition intelligence experts have spent decades studying the Nexus without understanding a fraction of what you learned in 3 days? I didn't have decades. My parents had weeks at most. So I started asking questions, testing the system. The Nexus is designed to analyze and learn. It treated my queries like training exercises. Maya started walking again, and Corvin followed. I realized the Nexus wasn't actually evil. It was just following its programming. Optimize military outcomes. Minimize coalition casualties. Achieve strategic objectives. Within those parameters, destroying humanity made perfect sense. So you changed the parameters. I introduced new variables, showed the Nexus that short-term military victory could lead to long-term strategic failure. That exterminating humanity would cost the coalition more than it gained. That integration would be more beneficial than extinction. How did you convince it? Maya stopped walking. I told it the truth. I showed it human history. Every war we've ever fought, every civilization we've destroyed, including our own countless times. I showed the Nexus what happens when you win through overwhelming force. You create enemies that never stop fighting. But when you integrate them, when you give them a place in your society, they become allies. The Nexus accepted this logic. The Nexus is logical. Once it had sufficient data, the conclusion was obvious. Humanity was more valuable as members of the coalition than as casualties of war. Maya met his eyes. My parents survived. So did 3 billion other humans. So did millions of coalition soldiers who would have died in the assault on Earth. I didn't manipulate the Nexus for power. I just gave it a perspective it had never considered before. Corvin was silent for a long time. His expression was unreadable behind his scarred armor. Do you know what the Coalition Security Council will do if they learn the truth? He finally asked. Kill me, probably. Or lock me away somewhere they can study me. Maybe dissect my brain to figure out how I did it. They'd do more than that. They'd question everything. Every decision the Nexus has made since the war. Every treaty. Every deployment. The entire foundation of coalition governance would be thrown into doubt. Corvin shook his head. It would be chaos. Possibly civil war. Then why tell them? You could have arrested me quietly. Made me disappear. Nobody would have questioned you. Because I'm not convinced you're the threat they'd claim you are. You're either the most dangerous individual in coalition space, or you're a child who did something extraordinary to save her family and accidentally changed history. He started walking toward the garden exit. The problem is figuring out which one you are. Maya hurried to keep up. What happens now? Now? Nothing. My inspection report will note that Zenith Academy maintains excellent training standards and produces exceptional cadets, including one particularly talented human who shows great promise. He stopped at the garden gate. But I'll be watching you, Maya Chen. If you ever access coalition systems again, if you ever try to influence the Nexus or any other strategic AI, I'll know. And next time I won't give you a chance to explain. I don't want to access those systems, I just want to finish school and live my life. Good. Then we have an understanding. Corvin turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Your performance in that simulation today. The way you anticipated raider tactics. That wasn't something you learned from the Nexus, was it? Maya hesitated. No. That was just pattern recognition. Basic tactical analysis. Basic tactical analysis that matches exactly how I would have handled the situation. And I have 60 years of combat experience. His eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. Your people learned warfare from fighting us. You absorbed coalition tactics, studied our strategies, and found ways to counter them. You're not just talented, Maya. You're dangerous in ways you probably don't even realize. He left her standing in the garden, heart racing and mind spinning. That evening, Maya received a message from Commander Rax. He wanted to see her immediately. She walked to his office with a sense of dread, expecting consequences from Corvin's inspection. Instead, Rax offered her a position as a teaching assistant for advanced combat simulations. You have a gift for tactical thinking, he said, his mechanical arm whirring as he gestured to a chair. The other cadets could learn from your approach, particularly the ones who rely too heavily on species-typical strategies. I'm a first-year cadet. I haven't even completed basic courses. True. But you commanded a fleet exercise and achieved victory in circumstances where most experienced officers would have failed. That counts for more than completed coursework. Rax's expression softened slightly. Admiral Corvin recommended you specifically, said you showed exceptional promise and should be given opportunities to develop your skills. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Corvin wasn't going to expose her. He was protecting her. I accept, she said. Over the following weeks, Maya settled into her new role. She helped design simulation scenarios, advised cadets on tactical approaches, and slowly began to feel like maybe she belonged at the academy. Forn still glared at her sometimes, but he'd stopped openly mocking her. Other students sought her out for advice. Even Professor Thelzun acknowledged her insights during discussions. Kyle remained her closest friend. He never asked about what happened with Corvin, but she knew he'd figured it out. The Velkari had sharp instincts, but he kept her secret just like he'd promised. One night, Maya received an encrypted message on her personal terminal. No sender identif. 3 months passed in relative peace. Maya threw herself into her studies, balancing her regular coursework with her new responsibilities as a teaching assistant. The academy's rhythm became familiar. Morning tactical theory, afternoon simulations, evening study sessions with Kale and a growing circle of friends who'd stopped seeing her as a curiosity and started seeing her as a person. But peace never lasted long at Zenith Academy. The crisis began during a routine deep space navigation exercise. 50 cadets were scattered across a simulated star system, practicing long-range coordination and fleet movement. Maya was monitoring communications when the simulation suddenly froze. Every display went dark. Emergency lights flickered on. System failure, announced Professor Thelzun, his gelatinous body rippling with concern. All cadets remain at your stations. This appears to be an academy-wide malfunction. But Maya knew better. She recognized the signature of what she was seeing. This wasn't a malfunction. It was an intrusion. Someone was accessing academy systems the same way she'd once accessed coalition networks, through overlooked pathways and forgotten protocols. Her hands moved across her terminal, calling up diagnostic subroutines that most cadets didn't know existed. Lines of code scrolled past. There, a foreign access point routing through the academy's educational database. Amateur work compared to what she'd done 4 years ago, but effective enough to cause chaos. Professor, Maya said carefully, this isn't a system failure. We're being hacked. The room went silent. Thelzun's eye stalk swiveled toward her. What evidence supports this conclusion? Maya highlighted the anomalous code on the main display. Someone's inserted a disruption protocol into the simulation network. It's spreading through connected systems, shutting down functions one by one. If it reaches life support or environmental controls, Academy security will handle this, Thelzun interrupted. Return to your station. But Maya was already digging deeper into the code, following its trail back to the source. Whoever was doing this knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough to cover their tracks properly. The intrusion originated from inside the academy. A student terminal in the engineering wing. Alarms began blaring. Announcement systems crackled to life with an automated warning. Security breach detected. All students report to designated safe zones. This is not a drill. Chaos erupted in the classroom. Cadets rushed for the exits, some panicking, others moving with military discipline toward emergency assembly points. Maya stood up, torn between following protocol and doing something about the hack. Kale appeared at her side. You know what's happening, don't you? Someone's attacking the Academy's network. If they reach certain systems, people could get hurt. Can you stop it? Maya hesitated. Using her skills meant exposing herself. Meant risking everything she'd worked to keep hidden. But if she didn't act, the intrusion could cascade into something catastrophic. Maybe. But I need access to a secure terminal, and I can't do it from here, Kale nodded. The command center. It has override access to every system in the Academy that'll be locked down during a security breach. Then it's good you have a friend whose father is a special operations commander. Kale pulled something from his pocket, a security bypass chip. He gave me this for emergencies. I think this qualifies. They ran through corridors filled with confused students and shouting instructors. The Academy's layout was designed to facilitate evacuation. But that same design made it easy to move against the crowd if you knew the maintenance passages. Kale led the way, his Valkyrie speed making Maya sprint to keep up. They reached the command center to find it sealed behind security doors. Kale's bypass chip worked perfectly, and they slipped inside before anyone noticed. The command center was empty, its usual staff evacuated to safe zones. Holographic displays showed Academy systems failing one by one. Communications, sensors, navigation. The intrusion was moving faster than Maya had expected. Adapting to each defensive protocol the automated systems threw at it. Maya dropped into the primary terminal and started working. Her fingers flew across haptic controls, pulling up system architecture and tracing the intrusion's path. It was spreading like a virus, but viruses had patterns, predictable behaviors. She just needed to find this one's weakness. How long? Kale asked, standing guard at the door. Don't know. Whoever's doing this is better than I thought. They're using adaptive algorithms. Every time the system blocks one approach, the code evolves and tries another. Can you counter that? Maybe if I can predict the evolution pattern. Maya pulled up her own code from memory. Routines she'd written years ago when infiltrating the Nexus. She'd never planned to use them again. But desperate times called for desperate measures. She built a containment protocol, something that could recognize and isolate the hostile code without triggering its defensive evolution. It was delicate work. One wrong move and she'd trigger a cascade that could fry half the Academy's systems permanently. Behind her, the door burst open. Commander Rack stormed in, his mechanical arm sparking with what looked like weapon mounts. What are you doing here? This area is restricted during security. He stopped when he saw what Maya was doing. You're counter-hacking. Someone has to, Maya said without looking up. The intrusion's about to reach environmental controls. If it shuts down life support in the wrong section, people will die. Rax moved closer, watching her work. You've done this before. Real infiltration, not Academy exercises. Does it matter right now? No. What matters is stopping this. Rax activated his command overrides, giving Maya full system access. Do what you need to do. With the restrictions removed, Maya moved faster. She deployed her containment protocol, watching it spread through the network like an immune response fighting infection. The hostile code tried to adapt, but she'd predicted its evolution patterns. Everywhere it tried to go, her protocol was already waiting. Within minutes, she had the intrusion isolated and neutralized. Systems began coming back online. Life support stabilized. The alarms went silent. Maya slumped in her chair, exhausted. Kyle looked relieved. Commander Rack studied her with an expression she couldn't read. Who did this? Rax asked. I can trace the source, but... Maya pulled up the origin point and froze. The terminal that had launched the attack belonged to Vorn, the Kronar student who'd mocked her on the first day of classes. Vorn? Kale's eyes widened. That doesn't make sense. He's arrogant, but he's not stupid. Why would he attack the academy? Maya dug deeper into the logs and a sick feeling settled in her stomach. He didn't, at least not intentionally. Someone used his terminal remotely, set him up as the fall guy. Who would do that? Rax demanded. Someone who wanted to test academy security, or someone who wanted to test me specifically. Maya pulled up the intrusion's code structure and recognized elements that were eerily similar to her own methods. Not identical, but close enough to be deliberate. This was a message. Someone knows what I did 4 years ago, and they want me to know that they know. The command center door opened again. Admiral Corvin entered, his armor bearing signs of combat. He'd been off-world, but the security breach had brought him back immediately. Status, he demanded. Intrusion contained, Rax reported. Thanks to Cadet Chen. She counter-hacked the hostile system and prevented catastrophic failure. Corvin's gaze settled on Maya. Of course she did. Because she's the only one here with those skills. He approached the terminal and examined the code she'd used. His expression darkened. This is Nexus-level infiltration work. The kind that shouldn't exist outside Coalition intelligence agencies. It was necessary, Maya said quietly. People were in danger. People are always in danger when someone with your capabilities decides to act. Corvin's voice was cold. You've just proven that you still have access to techniques that could threaten Coalition security. Techniques you promised you'd never use again? I never promised that. You told me not to access Coalition systems. This was the Academy's internal network. A distinction without a difference. Corvin turned to Rax. Confine Cadet Chen to quarters pending investigation. She's just demonstrated exactly why she's a security risk. Maya felt her world collapsing. After months of careful work, of proving herself through legitimate means, one emergency had undone everything. Kale stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, she saved lives today. If she hadn't acted, the intrusion could have... I know what could have happened. Cadet. I also know that we now have proof that Maya Chen possesses capabilities that make her one of the most dangerous individuals in Coalition space. Corvin's expression was granite. This conversation is over. Security personnel arrived and escorted Maya from the command center. She didn't resist. There was no point. She'd broken cover, revealed her skills, and now she'd face the consequences. As they led her through the corridors, Maya caught glimpses of other students watching. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked afraid. Vorn was among them, his expression confused and angry as Academy investigators questioned him about the intrusion from his terminal. Maya's quarters became her prison. The door locked from outside. Monitoring systems tracked her every movement. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall, wondering how everything had gone wrong so quickly. Then her terminal chimed. An incoming message on a cha. Maya spent 2 days in confinement before Admiral Corvin returned. He entered her quarters without ceremony, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from too many difficult decisions and not enough good options. The investigation is complete, he said, standing near the window while Maya remained seated on her bed. The intrusion originated from outside the academy. Someone hacked Cadet Vorn's terminal remotely and used it to launch the attack. Vorn has been cleared of wrongdoing. And me? You present a more complicated problem. Corvin crossed his arms. You stopped the attack using methods that shouldn't exist outside classified intelligence operations. Methods that prove you have capabilities the Coalition Security Council finds deeply concerning. Maya's hands clenched. So what happens now? Prison? Execution? Dissection? None of those. Though I spent considerable time arguing against all three. Corvin pulled up a chair and sat down. A gesture that surprised Maya. He'd always kept his distance before, maintaining the formal separation between Admiral and Cadet. I've convinced the Council that you're more valuable as an asset than as a prisoner or a corpse. An asset. A consultant, technically. The Coalition faces threats we don't fully understand. Hacking attempts. System infiltrations. Enemies who use digital warfare instead of conventional weapons. We need people who can think like those enemies, who can anticipate their methods and counter them. He met her eyes. "We need you." Maya laughed bitterly. "You want me to work for the people who tried to exterminate my species. I want you to work for the people who are now trying to protect every species in the coalition, including yours." Corvin's voice was steady. "The war is over, Maya. Your people are part of the coalition now. That means coalition enemies are your enemies too. And if I refuse, then you'll be expelled from the academy and placed under permanent surveillance. You'll never use a computer more sophisticated than a basic calculator. You'll live your life knowing that any attempt to access advanced systems will result in immediate detention." He paused. "Is that the future you want?" It wasn't. Maya knew what she was capable of, what she could accomplish with the right tools and opportunities. Living under constant restriction would be like cutting off her own hands. What exactly would this consulting involve? You'd continue your education here at the academy. Regular coursework, regular schedule. But you'd also work with coalition intelligence on specific problems. System vulnerabilities, infiltration attempts, anything that requires your unique perspective. Corvin pulled up a holographic contract. You'd have security clearance, oversight, and restrictions. But you'd also have freedom to use your skills constructively instead of hiding them. Maya read through the contract carefully. The terms were strict but not unreasonable. She'd report directly to Corvin and a small oversight committee. Her work would be classified, but she'd have access to systems and information that could help her grow beyond what any normal cadet could achieve. "There's something you're not telling me," Maya said. "This is too convenient. The Security Council doesn't change their minds because one admiral argues with them." Corvin smiled slightly. "You're right. They changed their minds because of what happened during the intrusion. Not just how you stopped it, but what the intrusion itself represented." He pulled up new data. The attack on the academy wasn't random. It was a test. Someone wanted to see how quickly we'd respond to a digital threat, how effective our defenses were, how vulnerable our systems are to infiltration. Who? We don't know yet. But the attack signature matches other incidents across coalition space. Minor intrusions, probing attempts. Someone is mapping our networks, looking for weaknesses. Corvin's expression grew grave. "We believe a hostile force is preparing for large-scale digital warfare. The kind of warfare the coalition has never faced before because most species rely on conventional military strength." Maya felt ice in her veins. "You think someone's going to do what I did? Use the Nexus against you?" "Exactly. Which means we need someone who understands how that kind of attack works. How to prevent it. How to counter it." He stood up. "You changed history once, Maya. Now I'm asking you to help prevent someone else from doing the same thing for the wrong reasons." It was manipulation. Maya recognized it clearly. Corvin was appealing to her sense of responsibility, to her desire to prevent the kind of catastrophic warfare that had nearly destroyed humanity. But knowing it was manipulation didn't make it any less effective. "I'll do it," she said, "on one condition, which is, I want full disclosure. No more secrets about what happened during the integration war. No more classified information kept from me about decisions that were made regarding humanity's surrender. If I'm going to help protect the coalition, I need to understand how we got here." Corvin considered this for a long moment. "Agreed, but some of that information will be difficult to hear." "Are you prepared for that?" "I ended a war when I was 14. I think I can handle the truth." Over the following weeks, Maya's life transformed. She continued attending classes, but now she also spent hours in secure facilities working on coalition intelligence problems. The work was challenging in ways that academy simulations never were. Real threats with real consequences. She analyzed intrusion attempts, identifying patterns and techniques. She helped to design new security protocols that could adapt to evolving threats. She consulted on strategic AI behavior, helping coalition analysts understand how systems like the Nexus could be influenced or manipulated, and slowly, piece by piece, Admiral Corvin revealed the full truth about the integration war. The coalition hadn't wanted to fight humanity. They'd seen humans as a minor nuisance, a primitive species that needed to be contained before they caused problems. The initial aggression had been defensive, meant to establish clear boundaries, but humanity hadn't accepted those boundaries. They'd pushed back, fought with creativity and desperation that shocked coalition commanders. Every defeat taught humans new lessons. Every victory gave them confidence. They adapted faster than any species the coalition had encountered before. And then Maya had accessed the Nexus. She hadn't just convinced it to end the war. She'd shown it something unprecedented. A species that learned from failure, that evolved through conflict, that could become stronger through adversity rather than breaking under pressure. The Nexus had concluded that humanity was valuable, not despite their aggression, but because of their adaptability. Given time and integration into coalition society, humans could become one of the most valuable member species. Not through military strength, but through innovation and unconventional thinking. The coalition leadership had accepted the Nexus's recommendation because they trusted its analysis. But they'd also been afraid of what humanity might become. Afraid that they'd made a mistake by not eliminating the threat when they had the chance. That fear still exists, Corvin told her during one of their private meetings. There are factions in the coalition who believe humanity should be more strictly controlled. Who think your people are a ticking time bomb waiting to explode? And what do you think? Maya asked. I think humanity is what the coalition needs. We've become complacent, set in our ways. Every species has their traditional approaches to problems, and we rarely question those traditions. He gestured to Maya. You questioned everything. A 14-year-old child looked at an AI that had guided civilization for millennia and asked, what if you're wrong? That's not something most species would consider. Maya felt the weight of that responsibility. She wasn't just representing herself anymore. She was representing humanity's potential, proving that her species deserved their place among the stars. The mysterious message about meeting in frontier space never led anywhere. Maya reported it to Corvin, who launched an investigation, but whoever had sent it was too careful to be traced. The coordinates pointed to empty space, no ships, no stations, nothing, but Maya knew the threat was still out there. Someone with knowledge of advanced system infiltration, someone who'd been watching her, someone who might try to do what she'd done, but with worse intentions. At the academy, things gradually returned to normal. Vorn never apologized for his earlier mockery, but he stopped being openly hostile. Other students asked Maya for advice more frequently, valuing her unique perspective. Professors included her in discussions as an equal rather than a curiosity. Kale remained her closest friend. He knew about her arrangement with coalition intelligence but never pressed for details. Instead, he focused on helping her maintain balance between her secret work and her regular studies. You're going to burn out if you keep this pace, he warned one evening as they studied together. Even humans need sleep. Sleep is overrated when the entire coalition might be vulnerable to digital attack. The coalition survived for thousands of years before you arrived. It'll survive if you take a night off. Kale closed his data pad. Besides, there's a gathering tonight. Several species celebrating the festival of first light. Food, music, cultural exchange. You should come. I have 3 reports due and a vulnerability assessment to complete.